Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Home Games. I think it's only fair to ask, can you see us? Can you see me and Nick? And can you hear us? Yes, good. First things first, right? We've done these for 16 weeks, I think, something like that, maybe more. I lose track now, and it's kind of, it's not always gone smoothly. I remember a week with Tom McPhail a month or two ago where things were a bit hinky, but it's never not worked. And the first time it didn't work was when I wasn't hosting it and when young Steve Nelson was doing it. Now, I'm never one to let an opportunity pass, and so obviously I've put Steve on some kind of capability procedures as a result of that. And what I thought we might do is have a vote as to whether I let him keep his job or not. No, the truth is that Crowdcast was down globally, it turns out, last week, and we didn't know because they didn't tell us. I guess they were busy. And Steve caught the bad end of that. So I'm very, very, very sorry for all of you that wasted time coming on. I'm really sorry for Jeannie from EQ and for the chat from Eden Tree as well, and for Steve. We're going to have another crack at the same session next week. So that'll be Home Games for next week, and I'm sure it will be absolutely flawless, and we'll enjoy watching Steve's kind of relief or discomfort, depending on what happens there. Anyway, our guest this week is Nick Eatock from Intelliflo, who most of you I'm sure will know. Hello, Nick. Say hello.
Hi,
Nick.
Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm relaxing. But 2 weeks out of doing this, Mike did it a couple of weeks ago, and then it was tolerable. And then last week didn't work, and I feel a bit out of practice. I'm a bit nervous, so I'm kind of settling in. Usual housekeeping, everybody. That in case we've got some new ones, numbers are climbing very nicely. Now, if any of you are having any buffering issues in your life generally, and in this in particular, I feel your pain. I've popped the wee link that we normally pop there, and that will just delay your feed a little bit, and usually sorts out most of the issues. One of the cooler things that Crowdcast does. Our housekeeping today will go, it's probably about a half-hour session today, maybe a little bit longer. I think Nick's under a little bit of time pressure, so we won't waste any time. The chat is obviously open on the right. You can ask anything you want. It's the guy from Intelliflo, right? So obviously you might want to ask things about Intelliflo. If it's a big functionality list that you'd like to ask for, there's probably a place for that, and it's probably not here. So, whatever. And you can either ask in the column on the right or in the Ask a Question button at the bottom. I'm going to be shilling for a report we've just launched. We launched it yesterday, which Intelliflo very kindly sponsored, which is why Nick's agreed to take time out to come and do this week's session. And if you would like to read that report, it's free, and we've popped a link to it in the green button that you can see just below there. Final bit of housekeeping for today. T-shirt of the week is, as you can all read, is very legible, Carach Angren. Now, Carach Angren are a Dutch kind of horror metal band with the corpse paint and all that kind of stuff, and it's not great, if I'm honest. Yeah, the latest record is excellent in points. There's a lot of strings and spooky little girl voices and stuff, and they're trying to make kind of horror movie type music. And the first couple of records are actually really good, and everything between is really poor. So if you're going to hop on Spotify after this, go for the most recent record probably. But the best thing about them is the logo, which is in kind of full indecipherable black metal kind of stuff. And I've got such a soft spot for logos that are meant to tell you about the band and you can't read the name. I just think it's kind of gloriously self-defeating. And I think we can all learn a bit from that. Right, so that's the end of all of that. What I'm going to do now is share my screen, and I've got just a couple of excerpts from the report that we've done, as I say, which Intelliflo sponsored. So I'm going to go through that, and I might ask Nick to chip in, and then we'll get into a more general discussion. So let me just grab this, and there we are. We're screen sharing now, and I'm going to focus in on that. So hopefully that is what you're saying. Dan, I have to say, pirate metal, I've got a little bit of it sitting about, your kind of Ailstorm and all that kind of stuff. And it's equally a minority sport. Looks like my GP's writing, says Andy, and that's about right too. Okay, so here we are. The report is called Better, Stronger, Faster, and it was about centralized investment propositions in particular. And the idea of the report was to try and get in and around KIPs and how they're constructed and why they're constructed the way they are and what's up with that. Because the overwhelming majority of business that comes through advisors, which most of you listening are, is done through some kind of centralized investment proposition, and there's a long history of regulation driving that, which is a nice little timeline in the report, which goes through that. But you know that saying that, how do you get to wherever? I say, well, I wouldn't start from here, that kind of thing. It kind of feels a bit like that to me. So we said in the update this week that if you were trying to create something that looked like 2020, right, that managed clients' investments in bulk to your requirements, you might not be spending, or you might not design something where you spend so much time wrangling it. Again, in a report, there's some really interesting research. We researched about 110 firms. Some of you, I think, are on the call today, which is lovely. And lots and lots of people were saying, look, we spend anything from some to far too much time on monitoring, construction, maintenance of these portfolios. But actually what we are is financial planners. We want to do the investment. We don't want to just kind of not be involved at all, because it's part of what we do, but we are clearly burning time on this stuff, and things could be a lot better. So with that in mind then, what do we get to? Well, there's a situation, we call it the KIP conundrum, right? Because it's alliterative, so it must be good. And the thing about this is, most firms that I know manage the kind of admin load and the annoyance of MiFID II disclosure, costs and charges, the trail of dead of client authorizations and all that kind of stuff. They manage it within existing headcount, and it's just, you got to try harder or work later, or you get less time for other things. So it's all opportunity cost rather than you're spending far too much on this. It's kind of abstract. But where firms start trying to outsource elements of that to get the time burn under control a little bit more, guess what? The costs start to creep up to the client. And so we get into these situations where, particularly with active portfolios, where by the time you've invited somebody else in to help construct the portfolio, somebody else to manage it, maybe a DFM or an independent consultant or something like that, and everybody's had a slice of the pie, the costs just climb and climb. And if you have a look at that wee table there, it's got current and future in it. We try to have a little kind of bead on where these costs can get to and where we think some of the savings might happen. So I've given a cost of about 85 basis points for the OCF. Now, clearly, if you're using a Vanguard Life strategy thing, or you're buying single strategy ETFs at 8 basis points or whatever it is, this isn't true for you. But we're routinely seeing portfolios at or around 85, including transaction costs. And we want to try and imagine a world where that can fall. Investment management's a really interesting one. I'm going to come back to that with Nick, because Intelliflo, as I'm sure you know, has some game in this. Probably 30 basis points at the moment. You might say 30 basis points plus VAT, but that VAT situation is changing really fast just now. I think that's ripe for absolutely tumbling down to about 5 basis points, indeed, if anything at all, to the client, possibly explicit charges to the advisor. Platform is platform. Average about 32 basis points now for a typical £250,000 portfolio. That's got room to fall a little bit. Bigger firms are achieving less than that right now. Advice is one of the biggest ones. The FCA figures show ongoing advisor charges average out, and averages aren't always our friend, at about 81 basis points, and there's plenty of room for that to fall. Now, if you stick all that together, you get to 2.3% nearly. Now, I know most of you will go, absolutely no way is it 2.3% with us. That's probably true because there's a relatively self-selecting bunch tend to come on webinars like this, but I assure you it's out there, and it's out there very, very commonly, especially when you start bringing transaction charges in. The costs really are kind of disproportionately high, I think. And it's not that anybody's profiteering. Everything's getting constructed with care. It's that there's a lot of people involved and they're all working in roughly the same way. And so what we're interested in is what can be done to try and either cut that cost, or if it's not just about cutting the cost, really change how it works. And we call that disruption, though that's a bit of a buzz phrase. And maybe if we do that right, we might be able to drop costs down to something like 1.5, maybe quite a bit lower. And that's what it's all about. So the little booze balls or Harvey balls there try to show you where we think the disruption might come in. We think there's lots and lots of room in the investment side of things for proposition disruption and pricing disruption, which that's likely to happen. The impact will be reasonable, but not massive, because the fund managers just don't have a reason to cut their own throats. It's turkeys and Christmas, right? Platforms, yeah, there'll be a drift down. And there are some newbies in there trying to get things moving faster. So that's interesting too, but it's not going to change the world, I don't think. I think it's important, of course it is, it's all important, but it's not going to change the world. Advice, well, a lot of the costs the clients bears are advice, which is probably right. But if we were really interested in dropping down the pie completely, then we would need to be looking at that. And no one's expecting advisors just to say, "Oh, lads, do you know it's been brilliant? We've been charging 80 basis points, but now it's 40, so that's fine." That's not the game. The game is to try and deliver massive efficiency gain so that you are able, if it fits your worldview and all that kind of stuff, to get into a world where the costs are much, much lower. So that's enough of all of that. I'm going to get rid of that now, and we'll come back to Nick. So Nick, you were a wonderful client with this thing, and you didn't get in the way and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's worth talking about the disruption to MPS, because with IMPS, you've done some pretty interesting stuff. So maybe not everybody knows it. So start with that, and then we'll talk about what its kind of boundaries are and where it might work.
Sure, no problem, Mark. I think what we tried to do was address both those items there. You talked about both price and distribution, and I must admit our main focus was on delivering a capability that could make advisor and client engagement just better, more frequent, more visible in many ways. And we did that because we talked to a lot of advisor businesses. Actually, for this piece of work, IMPS itself, we did some research across about 220 odd advice businesses to try and understand what their pain points were in terms of investment management, and how they recommended rebalancing to their clients, how they got through that whole engagement recommendation point. And we realized that we had the bare bones of technology that we could put together, enhance as part of that process, and deliver a service that just was much more effective, we think. And so what IMPS does is it allows advisors and clients to engage digitally over their assets, so that when if you've got 100 clients utilizing the IMPS service, the technology itself will work out when people need a rebalance. It will provide a recommendation to them. It'll provide, if they don't need a rebalance, it will just provide a report. It does all of this digitally. It deals with the acceptance or rejection of that advice itself, aggregates it together, and then allows you to communicate with your platform of choice, ideally, to actually implement the advice itself. And what we've heard from customers of ours, advice firms of ours who've started to use this capability is that that it's enabling them to interact on a more regular basis with their clients and raise the profile and the visibility of that advice, which we think is pretty important. What most advice businesses are doing as they're starting in a small way, in truth, they're looking at a segment of their clients and saying, okay, we're certainly not necessarily going to put all of our clients into any of these models. we're going to maybe just put one or two friends and family to begin with, and then they might look at a particular segment of their client base ongoing for that portion. So I think, it can work really well with prod and so on. We also wanted to bring in the platforms more tightly into this process. So we've got a full set of APIs that allow platforms to consume those services. And then the final piece is we have a marketplace that has two players in it at the moment. So Invesco was the first model provider in there, and Sparrows more recently, something like 5 weeks or so ago, I think, they came along. And essentially it allows an advice firm to choose from those models about what they'd like to interact with. And the response to that joined up service has been pretty good, actually. The ease of the solution has been a really strong point. A number of businesses are looking to outsource that investment management piece itself anyway, so it works really well with those. But we're also talking with a number of firms who are very reliant on their in-house models, and they're looking to use the technology to support their in-house models as well. So it can work in either guise, and hopefully achieves a really strong or an even stronger, I should say, client interaction with the with the advisor.
There's a couple of kind of interesting things to unpack inside there. I think the first is the kind of dual element of time burn that firms report just now. And I don't know if I genuinely don't know if your research found this too, but certainly successive waves of research we've done have found that it's the acceptance bit that's just, we call it the trail of dead of people in old models, that just didn't reply to the email or didn't pick up the phone or whatever it was. But also the kind of grind of maintaining models themselves.
Yeah.
On platforms, and no disrespect to any platforms that are listening, but it's a highly variable experience, I think. And obviously some of the answer of that is to go to an Invesco or a Sparrows, or to, you name it out there, a Tatton or a Bruin or whoever it might be, and get them to take the pain and pay them for that. Where, for the users that you've talked to, your starting point, I guess, as you say, is the interaction. But do they report gains throughout the business with spending kind of less time in guddling around, as we would say up here, with platforms as well?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing to say, Mark, is that it's still pretty early days. So to get back some tangible stats yet from those advice businesses on the gain they're making across their business is too early, really. But what those businesses are saying for the clients that they've put onto the service is that they are getting much better engagement with those clients, and that prime cost, the bit that you identified, the trail of dead. I'd never heard of that before I read the report, so it was good to understand what you were talking about there. Was absolutely far and away the biggest thing that was coming out for us from the research we did from advice businesses as being a real challenge. And the trouble is, clients are busy. Well, we're all busy, but clients are particularly busy. So do they have the time to go through, set up a meeting with their advisor to go through all of this stuff? Maybe annually they do. If you want to do it more frequently than that becomes a bit of a challenge for both sides of the equation, actually, both advisor and client. Whereas actually, if you can send it to them digitally, they're really used to engaging digitally these days, perhaps particularly over these last four months or so. And so because they're engaging digitally, they actually like the way the service is presented. And it certainly doesn't mean remotely doing away with face-to-face advice or those face-to-face meetings. It just means you can complement that with that range of services that are done digitally, which is, again, I think partly perhaps why it won't necessarily appeal to everyone. It'll appeal for an advisor to maybe a segment of their client base, and they can choose it on that basis. If you want to, just put one client on it. That's okay. That's all right. You don't need to go further than one if that's the right answer for you. If you want to do 100, 200, 300, that's fine too, obviously.
I think it does a couple of things, right? And IMPS is I'm obviously pretty interested in it, and it's one of the first solutions I've seen that kind of joins up something that's away from the platform into something which has the potential to edge into that platform space. So a lot of the functionality that many platforms have built, which is about some of that client management, almost CRM-y kind of stuff, and model maintenance, you're kind of edging into that as well. So I'm really interested in the boundary between the two. And I know I've said to you before, and I don't know if I've said on our home games before, but I remember back when, you know, I worked for platforms, we had a thing called the Battle for the Advisor Desktop, which is like a really awful game of Risk. And it was practice management versus platform, and what we wanted was people to spend all their time on the platform, and what you wanted was people to spend all the time over there. And it kind of feels like that race is largely won, and practice management pretty much won it, because running your business and having a proper CRM and all that kind of stuff is always going to win out over execution. But here we're starting to see platforms kind of becoming execution venues for the stuff that's done over here. And I wonder how far you think that can kind of go, because we're seeing, certainly with some of the newer platforms that are coming to market, they're much more open and integrative. I think they would have API sets to match off to what you do with the iOS store. Costs are sometimes a little lower too, but they're much lighter in terms of functionality. They don't have everything there. So are you seeing, do you think, a shift away from big, heavy platform stuff into being able to do more of that in your side of the fence?
Well, I think ultimately everyone needs to answer that question. Do what's right for the customer, and in this respect, the customer is sometimes the end client, and sometimes it's the advisor, or the advisor's support staff, power planners, and so on. So we all need to answer that question. How can we service those groups better? To your point, our typical users, we've got sort of 25,000 users of the IO technology. They spend on average about 4 hours a day in our technology, so it's a pretty key part of what they do, because it doesn't just deal with the actual final the transaction, if you like, the implementation of the advice. It deals with all of the other bits, including servicing, and obviously client servicing doesn't always result in anything to be done. Probably read about that. So actually trying to create something that sits more in their world, we thought was pretty important. At the same time, we've seen very strong take up in terms of the digital portal of clients coming into the advisors portal. Apart from anything else, because it aggregates everything, both their advised and their non-advised stuff in one place, so it becomes their financial dashboard for everything. And also how they interact with their advisor. So it's the way in which they ask questions of the advisor. Advisor can respond to those. If you're part of an advice event, it manages that process too. So it seemed a really logical place for us to base much of this around. At the same time, we are 100% believers, and always have been, in open architecture. So we've made sure that we've created an API and consumable APIs that third parties, be they older or newer platforms, can use. That's just part of the game, and we absolutely intend to do that. I think there is, funny enough, I think there's a massive opportunity for those newer platforms, because they seem to be a bit nimbler. And actually, if you're newer, very often that is the way. You've got less of a ship to turn. So I get that. But at the same time, the more established platforms, many of them have been through replatforming, which no one can have missed that happening.
What? There was a replatform?
Did you? Yeah. God, breaking news here. So because they've gone through that, I think there is the ability for them, working with whoever that, and often it's FNZ or someone like that, their technology vendor, to actually get that better than best integration. Because we think that actually, it's not necessarily who is the player who wins the day, it's the process will win the day. And that's that kind of drives everything that we stand for.
That's really interesting. If anyone's got any questions for Nick, by the way, now's a great time to chuck them in. And we're watching our time a little bit today. Talking of processes, right? You're in an astonishingly good place to know how advice firms have faced kind of bulk level the challenges of the last few months. So have you seen changes in usage? What's been up with how people are interfacing? That's a terrible verb, isn't it? With Intelliflo over the last little while?
Yeah, usage changed fundamentally the week into lockdown, really, and it hasn't really gone back since. So usage on core IO, so advisors, power planners, and so on, went up about 20%. So that 4-hour average use stat has actually gone up since. The 4 hours is an old one. But the digital side of things is much more marked, so we've got sort of 300% increases there across just core registration, login, and so on. DocuSign is up, I think, 6 or 7-fold. So getting clients to sign documents electronically within a safe, contained environment. Video conferencing like we're doing here, but integrated with co-browsing and all stored back against IO from a practice management perspective. That's up over 10-fold. So yeah, we definitely seen these increases. In fairness, many of them have started from a point which isn't full maturity yet, so it's probably easier to get those lifts. But the lifts are pretty marked. It's pretty sensational, and importantly, they don't seem to be going away as we're returning. For however long, I don't know, but to a period of more normality, and so I think that's really interesting.
It is, and I guess people are in front of a screen for more of their day, so they naturally bottom out a little bit more about what they can use. But it's always struck me that whether it's IO or one of the your obviously less able competitors out there, because you're here and they're not, it's a bit like, I don't know what system, maybe Excel or something like that. You use a tiny fraction of what's there. And I know we're obviously not an advisor firm, so we don't use stuff like IO, but I know that the packages that we use, and a dumb example would be Teams, that we knew we had, never went near it until we're walking cliche, right? Until the first week of lockdown, and thought, oh wow, look at this is actually all right. And now we won't live without it. So are you finding that people are asking for new things, or are they actually going, oh, I didn't realize that you could do that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. So firstly, calls. So despite the fact that usage of IO has gone up by about 20%, calls have actually gone down to our support center. So wow. You think, okay, that's interesting, which causes us to dig a bit deeper. And what we were finding, or what we found, is that advice businesses are self-serving more in terms of working out how to use the tech. So there's lots of online collateral to help them do that, but they're actually using that more, which is good. So when we look across the board, not every advice firm, but the overwhelming majority actually are using more of the system today than they were 4 months ago. So we've had this thing called the e-advisor index going for the last couple of years or so, which is about trying to ensure that, to your Excel or Teams example, that actually people use the technology more, because the more you use it, the more you'll get out of it, basically. And the e-advisor index, amongst other things, is designed to illustrate to an advice business kind of where they are at the moment, and what good looks like, and we'll help them through our customer success team to try and get there. Because the more you use it, we've shown through the data that actually the advice businesses who use the technology more have twice the assets, twice the revenue, twice the clients, broadly speaking. So there's been a desire to do that anyway. I think COVID has just accelerated that. Initially, it probably gave a number of businesses a little bit more time, but they used up that time to try and say, how can we be better? How can we do things better? What will be really interesting is to see what happens in this next 6 months as I say, for however long we get back to normality. How does that then look like in terms of their use of the technology? Do they carry on digging deeper? Because I'm sure they will. Do they stay where they are for a bit? It'll be fascinating to watch.
I will, and I've just got a kind of doomsayer kind of thing that actually it'll just be a bubble and people will go back. But the sort of things that might persist are the folk that have found handy things inside the systems they already pay for. Why wouldn't they carry on with that? So hopefully, those of you watching, if you spent the time doing it, don't lose the gains that you made just because the first client through the door after lockdown ends wants to do everything the old way. I think there's plenty of room to do other stuff. I've got a couple of roadmap questions for you that were definitely going to happen, but they're not nasty ones. Most of them are around what you were talking about with the open architecture kind of approach, well, we've spoken before about some work that we did with Origo, and I was always kind of the opinion that there'd be kind of two very different players with Origo and with the IO store, that they probably wouldn't talk, and that was kind of okay. But you've got that coming in at some point that you'll integrate with the Origo integration hub, and also someone's asking about open banking for the client portal side of things. So you got any sense of how those are panning out?
Yeah, no, I was talked through both of those for sure. So firstly, in terms of the Origo piece, we've been working with Origo for some time now about how they can interact with our API and store and the Dev Hub that allows data and services to be consumed into IO for the benefit of the advice businesses. They have got beta versions of some work they've been doing with Aegon so far that are live on our store, and they're working with a whole bunch more of providers to also use those same API integration points. And broadly speaking, at the moment, that's largely around valuations, income, and transaction history. Those are the three sort of big bucket items. There are things like account opening through our API and what have you. But those first three are the ones that are receiving most focus at the moment. So we're very happy to work with Origo. They're making those apps on our store available. They're a free install. So, there's, if I was an advice firm, I'd just go with that. It's a deeper level of integration. Why wouldn't you? And we intend to continue to be supportive of that. So pretty much anything we build into IO has a corresponding API, which allows a third party to work with it. Sometimes there's a bit of a lag whilst we're testing the API, and we might use it privately for a year or so before we release it publicly. But the ethos that we've got is that we will always share that. To your question, I just can see it, from Graham. Hi, Graham, about open banking. This is something we were aiming to launch a long time ago. It's taken us a lot longer to do than we thought, mainly due to stability of sort of the next version of the open banking standards. But we're getting to a place now where we're pretty comfortable. It's been in testing for some time now. We are hopeful that it'll be out in the next few weeks. So it's literally around the corner. And we've had a number of our staff internally and a few customers as well, a few advice businesses, using it in the meantime, and it's absolutely sensational. And actually, by working with some of the advice businesses we've done, we've really been able to enhance it as well. We're going to be initially launching it, as I say, in the next few weeks. We're going to give the engine about a month of road track as it refines its sort of auto categorization, and then we're going to link it straight through into affordability, income and expenditure, and so on. So it's going to be amazing. Really looking forward to that. We've also had some end customers, namely family of our staff, who are using it and are now using it for budgeting, which is really good. I've even found out through using it myself how much my wife spends on flowers, which is quite an obscene amount of money. But anyway, we're still together, which is the good news. But it was touch and go for a few moments there.
That's why I don't have it, because if my wife finds out what I spend on guitars, then we're in major problems here. And just another couple of quick questions, and then I know your pressure time will let you off. I think these sort of go together in a funny way. It's all about client interaction, and more pushing down that sort of thing. So Tom asking a little bit about updating fact finds and that side of things, something that guys like Cash Calc and Truth do a lot of that, as I'm sure you know. And Richard talk about prospecting, which I think is really interesting as well. So that's that CRM feel. So these are both areas that, is away from kind of practice management in the hinterland of what an IO or whatever would have done. Do you think these are, is that somewhere where you're interested in pushing through?
Yeah, so very much. So firstly, on Tom's question in terms of update your fact find style stuff. So we have something called the gamified fact find within our PFP, which enables a client to update elements of the fact find. That's a capability we're building out. Open banking is actually a pretty important step along that, and it relates to prospecting actually, or onboarding of potentially new clients. Having those clients go through a journey whereby they actually start filling in details of the fact find using things like open banking and some of our stuff like auto-populating purchase history on property and so on, all just helps get more and more data to you before necessarily you have that first meeting with the end client. So those are both things that we would regard that we do some of at the very least. I think in terms of the gamified fact find for PFP, that's extending further. We release our joint capability in the next few weeks. We are adding assets and liabilities in the next few months. So yeah, we aim to cover that whole piece and then provide a way which it can deal with that annual suitability process, really, of allowing the client to review their fact find. Prospecting. So as I say, some bits can be done within PFP. Our API and store also integrates with a number of different parties who do the earlier side of that journey and then push that data into IO. So Richard, it'd be good to get one of our customer managers to reach out to you and have a chat on some of that stuff. I will do a quick screen grab and see if we can get that sorted.
And the kind of client acquisition and the marketing kind of upstream, up the funnel kind of thing, that's a very different game, right? So that involves harvesting quite large pools of data sometimes and trying to work out what to do with them. And it's, funnily enough, it's something that we've been spending some time on recently and looking at systems that are out there, HubSpot and various things like that. And it's a whole world in itself. And there's a really interesting kind of religious question inside that, which is how much do you want one or two systems to do in the business that you use? Do you want one ring to rule them all? Are you happy to invite various pieces of technology and try and get best of breed? Because I think even you, Nick, might say that it is unlikely that one thing is going to do everything absolutely at the best it possibly could in the world.
Yeah, well, I mean, fundamentally, that comes down to the choice that open architecture presents. So if your technology provider, be that us or one of our competitors, does all the bits that you need and you're happy with that, just use one. Why go elsewhere? But actually, if you want to use best tools like HubSpot, for example, HubSpot's a sensational tool. Use those kind of tools. And the reason why we created the API, amongst others, is to allow those third-party businesses to be part and integrated with the solution. So I think the record by a third party for integrating with our API is 3 days, just 3 days. So this kind of stuff can work, and that's the modern age, if you like, of RESTful APIs, which isn't about trying to get data standards agreed by everyone throughout the industry. That sort of that was an approach of previous decades. Actually, RESTful APIs is the reason why technology businesses across the planet have actually been able to integrate. It's why you use tools like Zoom and others, because they can integrate with other pieces of the jigsaw that you use.
Brilliant. Listen, I know you're on a tight time budget and we've taken up far too much already, so I'm going to say thank you very much, Nick. Really appreciate it. Thanks for sponsoring the paper as well. Yay! We can do that, and you can download it. I'll cut you off now and I'll finish up with everybody here.
Okay.
So we'll say thank you very much, Nick, and have
Thanks,
a
Mark.
lovely rest of the week.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Good afternoon. Bye.
Okay, so that's our show. Thank you very much for tuning in this week. We massively appreciate you coming back. We probably will move these to being slightly less frequent, maybe later in the summer. We asked you via a survey a little while ago what you thought, and I think people are cool with that. So don't know when, but we might move to fortnightly or something like that. Let us know if you think we should do that, or if we should keep going every week. There will come a point probably where life's out and about a little bit more, where a weekly thing will be a bit less relevant. Do please download the report. We're really quite proud of it. The findings in it, I think, are kind of interesting. We're not going to change the world with it, but give you something to think about over your coffee one day. And please, please, please do come back next week so that you can watch Steve triumphantly crest the wave of technological difficulties and do the ESG session, which I think was going to be an absolute cracker, by the way, and will be again next week. Steve, it appears in the chat, is fully in favor of that. That's it from me. The only kind of final bit, as I always do, if you are enjoying this kind of stuff, and if it moves you to think, well, gosh, you know, maybe we could do something as a result. Samaritans are our house charity. You don't need to make a big fuss about it, but if you have the opportunity online or elsewhere to drop a quid in the tin for Samaritans, then all of this will be worthwhile. Thank you as ever. We'll leave you to it, and Langcat out.